I am Marcia Marins, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Chautauqua County, and I am moderator for this evening's in-person Meet the Candidates Forum. And because of that, I would like to ask you to please be sure your phones are quieted. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. The League is nonpartisan. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidates. This has been the policy for over 100 years. Membership is open to anyone who is eligible to register and vote, whether male or female, despite the name. And we hope you will consider joining the League of Women Voters. Throughout its history, the League of Women Voters has been providing opportunities for candidates seeking public office to take their case directly to the public. The League Candidates Night are an expected part of political campaigns for every level of public office. League Candidates Nights are controlled by the League, not by the candidates or their parties. So as you watch and listen to this debate, pay attention to how the candidates are answering the questions. Are they specific? Are they sincere? Are they knowledgeable? Are the candidates being asked about your priority issues? And are the questions fair and pertinent? Are these microphones giving me feedback?
Yes.
Would you please remove them, because it's annoying for all of us.
They shouldn't be. They're going directly to our system.
Pardon me?
No feedback from those of us because they're not broadcast.
It could be these.
Well, but these are the ones that they can hear.
Right, but if I turn mine off, he turns his off, we probably won't get it. If
Well,
you
let's
talk,
see.
but then we'll have to turn it on when we
Okay.
speak.
Afterwards, talk about the debate with your friends and family. Did the debate sway your decision? Did you learn something new about the candidates' positions? Most importantly, you have to vote, either early voting or on August 23rd. It's your best opportunity to make your voice heard and help shape the issues that affect all of us. If any portion of this Meet the Candidates Night is redistributed out of context, we will alert the media and file the appropriate complaints with any applicable governing authority. This event will be rebroadcast on Fredonia Local Access TV on channel 1301, WNY News Now at noon tomorrow. And you can check their website and the League of Women Voters website for a link to the YouTube presentation of this debate. So with us this evening are two candidates for Congress to fill the unexpired term of Congressman Tom Reed in a special election, Joe Sempolinski and Max DelliaPia. It's a debate. So we, like a referee, enforce the rules and time and simply stay out of the way. Our timekeeping team is there. Raise your hand, folks. Keep an eye on them, because I will. We have not given the candidates these questions in advance, except the first one, and they will respond unscripted. However, both candidates will have 1 minute to respond to a question they received prior to this meeting and include a brief presentation discussing their qualifications. Each reply will be limited to 1 minute. Candidates will also be able to rebut or challenge one another, limited to 30 seconds, and there will be no counter rebuttals. And there will be 1 minute for closing statements. The order of responses for this first question was drawn by the lottery prior to the start of this meeting and will be the same order at the closing. Your statement should describe your qualification for the office and respond to the following questions. What do you consider the most pressing issue facing New York's 23rd Congressional District, and what would you do to address and resolve the issue if elected? And we will begin with Mr. Sempolinski.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. My name is Joe Sempolinski. I'm the Republican and Conservative Party nominee for Congress in the special election, and I am putting myself forward as I believe I'm the more qualified candidate because of my experience in the congressional office. I spent many years as the district director for this exact district in this exact configuration, dealing with federal issues for people from here in Chautauqua County all the way over to Tioga County, up through the Finger Lakes. In every corner of this district, I've dealt with every community in this district on federal issues. And the most important issue that's going on right now, in my opinion, is inflation, because it affects everyone and it affects those of limited means the most. People who are living paycheck to paycheck, people who are on a fixed income, that's the most important issue. And the way we deal with it is to stop the loose spending in Washington, D.C. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act was just signed into law. It'll do nothing of the sort. I would have been against that. My opponent would have been for it. I think that's a clear distinction on the most important issue of the day.
Thank you. Mr. DelliaPia.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. My name is Max DelliaPia. I spent 32 years in the Air Force. I retired as a colonel. I commanded the 109th Airlift Wing in Schenectady. We had 1,260 airmen and women. I worked also as a Brookings Fellow for Senator Carl Levin for a year on his personal staff, and then worked for the Secretary and Chief of Staff of the Air Force and Air Force Senate Liaison. I'm also an attorney. I own my own practice and practiced until the first Gulf War, and the next 18 years I spent in basically full-time service. I'm also concerned about our democracy. I think it is not just the New York's 23rd most important issue, it is our nation's most important issue. We need to listen and speak with one another. We don't have to agree on everything, but we do, or we should, focus on the things that bring us together as Americans, not what pulls us apart.
Thank you very much. We will now open our meeting to a question and answer format. The timekeeper, again, will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. Rebuttals are limited to 30 seconds. So we have a bunch of questions, some submitted ahead of time through a phone and email, and some were submitted here. So I'm just going to randomly wander through the questions. If you are elected, would you act to oppose or support the proposed wind turbine project in Lake Erie? We'll begin with Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, I know that's a very controversial issue out here in Chautauqua County. My position on any sort of energy project is that the local folks should be in charge of making the decision. It shouldn't be forced on them from the federal or state level. If local people support a particular project, then the particular project should move forward. If the local people oppose a particular project, then it shouldn't move forward. They're the ones that have to live with the project and the negatives that go along with any particular type of project. In this particular case, I know there's been a lot of local opposition to wind turbines in the lake. So it sounds like that may be something where that's where the local folks don't want that to go. I certainly understand that position because it's a pretty pristine and beautiful body of water, and there could be some disruption there. But to me, on any of these, whether it's wind turbines or solar panels or anything of that ilk, it should be handled by the local folks, not forced down from Albany or Washington, D.C. in either direction.
Thank you. Mr. DelliaPia.
The wind turbine issue is, the wind turbine issue is quite divisive. A lot of people are upset about it. Some people don't want to buy them, they don't want to look at them, but there are some legitimate concerns that need to be vetted first. For example, it used to be a dead lake. Erie was a dead lake, and there's a lot of stuff underneath, and if we disrupt acres and acres of the bottom of the lake, it could affect our drinking water. It could also affect the aquatic animals, and we do have kind of something to look toward, and that would be the Cleveland project. It's like 5 turbines, and it's on 8 to 10 acres. And if we look and see that it doesn't work, or it costs too much, and it doesn't give us electric power at a reasonable cost, then we should stop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn it off. Can you hear us okay without microphones? Wait, before. You cannot hear us? Okay. Better with the microphones. All right.
Can you hear us just off of her mic? Is that all right? Okay, we can just do that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Kind of pushing.
All right, yeah. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling revokes the federal constitutional right to abortion, opening up the door for individual states to ban or severely restrict women's reproductive rights. Do you support Governor Hochul's comprehensive plan to ensure safe access to women's rights, reproductive health, and abortion services in New York State? Mr. DelliaPia.
I do, but it's not sufficient. I'm concerned about an activist court that would have basically a roadmap to take away people's rights. You know, same-sex marriage, contraceptives, all those things that we don't want to go in reverse here as far as rights go. So I think it needs to be codified. Roe v. Wade needs to be codified at the federal level. And I support Governor Hochul, but we absolutely need to do that. The other thing that we need to do is to think about what happens when we send someone through the confirmation process in the Senate and they lie, when they fully intend to do something the opposite of what they say they're going to do, and they are applying for a lifetime position. How do we feel about that? What can be done about that? It's a lifetime appointment, and yet they lie to take the place of judge. It's not right.
Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, I've been very clear throughout this entire campaign. I'm a pro-life candidate, and the first thing I think of when I think of abortion, first person that comes to mind is my daughter. My older daughter, was born with Down syndrome, and most pregnancies, but that's a diagnosis, end up in a termination. And to me, that's a very sad commentary on where we're at as a society. But I do think there are ways that we can come together on this issue. Very often folks who are pro-life, like myself, get criticized that perhaps they only care about the child when it's in the womb. I'm very open to increased support and spending for mothers, prenatal care, postnatal care, support for the child after it's born, support for maybe workforce training, all the things that make it more difficult for somebody to be able to bring a child to term. We need to come together as a society and help mothers support their children.
Thank you. In addition to what they do now, what can Congress do to help veterans? Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, this is a very important issue. It's one of the things that you spend a lot of time on when you're a member of Congress. I want to first applaud Mr. DelliaPia for his service to the country. That commands respect. And we have of the Bath VA right here in this congressional district. When I was the district director, we spent a lot of time working on cases coming out of Bath and out of the Canandaigua VA, out of the VA clinics in this portion of the district. So it's really going to be a focus on the ground level, if I am the congressman, is to continue to maintain that level of direct constituent service. But as far as broad policy is concerned, when someone signs up to join the military, they've made a lifelong commitment to us. We need to make a lifelong commitment to them and to make sure that they are taken care of for all of the seen and unseen wounds that they bring back from the battlefield. I'm 100% committed to our veterans.
Thank you. Mr. DelliaPia.
As I watched the pact, when the 25 senators that said that they were going to actually voted for it in June, all of a sudden decided to use the veterans as a political pawn. It upset me because these people are literally living from scan to scan, 3 months at a time. And we need to have the presumption on the side of the veteran. We did this with Agent Orange. We did it for the nuclear exposure during World War II. And we're doing it now with the burn pits. I am grateful for people coming together and getting that passed. But as recently as a month ago, I talked to a guy that he said he was clearly upset. He was a veteran, and he said, just forget my name. He said, I'm in end-of-life issues, and I just want peace. I'm tired of fighting the VA. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. This question is for Mr. Sempolinski. On your Facebook page, you said you would oppose the radical Democratic policies. Can you give any specific laws that the Democrats have passed or proposed that are radical?
The Inflation Reduction Act that was just signed into law, to have tens of thousands of IRS agents added. There are not tens of thousands of billionaires in this country. We know who those IRS agents are going to be poking around looking at. It's going to be regular folks like all of us. The proposals, whenever we're dealing with an issue from my friends on the left, tend to be spend more government. We just saw an example of that passed and signed into law very recently. I, again, would have opposed that law because it doesn't deal with the actual problem of inflation. Every objective scorer says if any results are going to happen on inflation, it's going to happen down the road and be minimal. To ignore the most important problem facing our country, pass a law that claims to do something about it when it won't, and slip in the amount of spending and increased taxes and increased bureaucracy that was put into that bill, that's radical.
You want to rebut? 30 seconds.
It's aimed at people who are making $400,000 a year plus. If you're in that category and you are cheating on your taxes, you should be concerned. I do not agree with my opponent saying it's going to be going after the little people. It just isn't. It also provides some ability to drill for oil, which is important, because I want energy independence as a country for strategic reasons. And last but not least, okay, thank you.
Thank you. By the way, if you have a question that you want to ask in person, just raise your hand and one of the students will hand you a microphone. And you can ask a question unscripted too. So the next question is, and there are several questions on this category, so I'm going to ask this one and see how we do. Do you believe in man-made global warming? And if so, what should be the federal response? We'll begin with Mr. DelliaPia.
I do believe that, but I believe that we can in a bipartisan way, approach these issues from a hunter, fisherman, someone that enjoys boating. You know, people on both sides have a common desire to turn over their country in a better state than it was before. Clean water, clean air, and clean soil is kind of an elemental thing that I think everybody can agree on. We need to go toward a greener future. It's not going to happen overnight. There's not a switch that's going to be turned. But we need to build out the infrastructure for EVs. We also, and there's money to do that. And we also need to allow the market to work to allow EVs, electronic vehicles, or electric vehicles to come down in price, because the average guy right now can't afford a $90,000 electric vehicle. But okay.
Thank you. Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, I consider myself a conservationist. Protecting the environment is important. It's clear the climate has been changing. I'm sure that some portion of that is man-made and some portion of it's natural. But where I get concerned is when the word comes down from the far left saying you have to accept some major change in the economy, some major disruption that's going to hurt your average person, maybe cost them their livelihood or cost them a large amount of money. And it's presented in a way where if you don't do exactly what we want to do right now, you somehow hate the environment, or there's some apocalyptic thing that's going to happen. I would concur. I think this is an area where left and right can work together because, as my opponent said, everybody lives in the same environment. Nobody wants pollution. Nobody wants a situation where the environment's not clear. So while I think there is some disagreement with some of the far fringes on this, the most people in the middle realize there can be a common sense solution that preserves the environment and preserves the economy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. If elected, will you support or oppose cuts to Medicare and Social Security and or raise the eligibility age? We'll begin with Mr. Sempolinski.
No, I don't support cuts to those programs. They have the title entitlement program. People sometimes don't like that title, but the reason it's used is because you're entitled to them. For Social Security and Medicare, you paid in. You paid in over the course of your working life, and you should expect to get the benefits that you've paid into. Now, we have to make sure that we have a clear and non-political and open discussion as to what needs to be done to make sure these programs are there, not only for the folks that are eligible and about to become eligible, but for folks that are younger, folks that are children, folks that are generations to come. So we have to have an open discussion about how we make sure they're there, but things like cuts or things like just jerking the age around or something like that, that's not fair to people that have paid in to these systems over the course of many, many decades.
Mr. DelliaPia.
I'm absolutely opposed to it, but I'd go another step further and say we need to guarantee the liquidity and solvency of the programs by increasing the wages above which you don't pay for Social Security. You know, you only pay up to this amount. I think the cap should go off. It should at least be raised, and I think that would resolve a lot of the issues about the Republican Party wanting to basically undermine or cut these programs that really our elderly and infirm actually depend on for their livelihood and for their life.
Thank you very much.
We have a question from the audience.
Bring the mic over. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everybody. I have a question for Max. My name is Adam Sear. I live in Bolivar, New York. I'm also Allegheny County legislator.
Put it up by your mouth.
Do you think Governor Cuomo should be prosecuted for the deaths at the nursing homes at the beginning?
Thank you very much. Well, you can answer the question. Thank you very much. And the mic back. Yep. Do you want to answer?
I don't think that, sorry, I don't think that's a decision for a sitting congressman to make. It really is up to the state attorney, the state attorney. You know, I don't have any say in that. Let the evidence show what it's going to show, and let the chips fall where they may. I have no vested interest either way, except in the case of justice.
Thank you. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, and I would say that is a situation, that is a very tragic situation with many, many deaths, and no one has been held accountable for that order. I would look at the former governor, look at the current governor, what did she know? But that was one of the most tragic incidents and a very tragic time. And you had people put in harm's way that did not need to be put in harm's way. And however it can be done, I believe Governor Cuomo needs to be held accountable for that.
Thank you for answering.
Thank you very much. We're going to go on. How will you ensure the protection of certain groups from hate crimes? We'll begin with Mr. Sempolinski, sorry.
Yeah, I believe, are we good? Yeah.
I forgot to turn.
No, I believe everybody is entitled to equal protection under the law. That's constitutionally guaranteed. And obviously there are groups that have, whether they're religious groups, whether they are ethnic minorities, whether they are sexual minorities or gender minorities, that have been targeted unfairly because of who they are. That's wholly and completely inappropriate. And it's part of that is what can we do as legislators, but part of it also is what can we do as a society. I think every person, every human being in society has to look in the mirror and follow the golden rule. I don't think that's particular to any one religion. That's pretty common to any morality system, that you should treat everyone as you would like to be treated, and especially those who are vulnerable in our society for other reasons.
Thank you very much. Mr. DelliaPia.
A lot of you may know that my daughter's transgender. And I believe that she should be able to be who she is, to love who she wants to love. And I don't think any government agency or anyone in the society should be telling her any different. I believe that we should all treat each other with respect and allow people to live their life as they choose to, as long as it doesn't interfere with other people's lives. So, same-sex marriage is something that we really don't want to go backward on. It's not good for the society. It's not fair. Why should they not be able to live a life of love and commitment like anybody else? So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Always have to remember to turn on the mic. I seem to forget that. Do you agree or disagree that wealthy individuals and large corporations should pay a significant percentage in taxes, and why? Mr. DelliaPia.
I'm really on the side of equity. I think it's fair that everyone pay their fair share. Your mic is on. That everybody pay their fair share. I don't think that's too much to ask. There was a provision in that recent piece of legislation to say that there should be a minimum tax for corporations of 15%. I think that is a place where they can pay their fair share. As long as it's not something that's changing a lot and they can plan on it, it will work for them, and it'll work for our government, and it'll work for our country. And I think I don't think that secretaries should have to pay more taxes than a president, for example. It's just, to me, it's just an item of fairness. Thank you.
Mr. Sempolinski.
Well, the good news is we already have a progressive tax schedule. So if you make more, you pay more. If you make less, you pay less. And I think that's appropriate. Where I get concerned is when there's talk about, as was done in the Inflation Reduction Act, taxes going up. Taxes going up are just going to be passed on to regular people, and we don't need to do that in a recession. And yes, we are in a recession, despite whatever definition can be pulled out of thin air. Now, where I think there can be some common ground here is everybody gets concerned where there are unfair loopholes, where somebody is able, because they have a better accountant or a better attorney, to find some sort of loophole where they're making a lot of money and not paying the rate that would be commensurate with the amount of money they're paying. There has been a lot of steps in the right direction of that over the last 10, 15 years or so. There are fewer loopholes in the tax code than there used to be, thanks to Republican legislation. But we always need to make sure that it is fair along those lines.
Thank you. Okay. Next.
I'm not sure I need it, but we'll use it anyway. One thing that I noted, you're talking about higher taxes on companies, and it sure sounds nice. Companies don't pay taxes. The reason I say that is you've got company A and they make hot dogs. You raise taxes on them, your $1 hot dog now becomes a $2 hot dog.
What's your question, please?
I'm just saying, what are you're talking about raising taxes? Companies don't pay taxes.
What is your question?
I didn't have, I just made a statement.
Well, this is not a debate with
I agree with the gentleman.
you. Thank you. We need questions. Did you get a chance to answer that question about taxes and why? I think.
I basically brought it.
Do you agree or disagree that wealthy individuals and large corporations? Did you answer that?
I did answer.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Good. Lost track there for a moment.
It's okay.
Next question. What is your position on high fuel prices, and what is your plan to alleviate the burden on those of us in rural areas of the state? Mr. DelliaPia.
This is not something that is just based on who's in the White House. It's a global commodity. What's happening in the Ukraine has an effect. But I believe we should be energy independent, and that will help, because we should not be going to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and being held over a barrel when we have the capability to maintain and retain energy independence. This is a business decision that was made by the oil companies during Economics 101, supply and demand. In COVID, people weren't traveling. There wasn't a lot of demand, so the price was lower. But they made a decision not to increase refining capability and not to increase drilling, and that has affected the price, and they're doing very well. Check their stock prices. Thank you.
Mr. Sempolinski.
This is a very crucial issue, and especially in this district. And this is a district where Subway is where you get a sandwich, not how you get to work. Everybody needs to get in a car or a truck, pretty much, to get where they're going to live their lives in the 23rd Congressional District. And we are at a point where it's very sad to see Democrats, including my opponent, Joe Biden, brag about how prices are coming down a little bit when they're still $2 or more higher than they were when President Biden took office. So you're talking about a situation where the Democrats control the presidency, the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, the governor's mansion, the state assembly, the state senate, and don't want to take responsibility for the fact that we still have $4 gasoline, and that is devastating people in this district. I was going door to door in Canasteo, the village where I live, and I talked to a gentleman who was a retiree. He told me for the first time in his life he had to go on food stamps. The reason he had to go on food stamps was because he had decided between putting gas in his car or eating. That's unacceptable and a failure of the Biden administration.
Thank you very much.
Can I say something?
Sure, you can rebut.
I'd like to just say that I didn't hear a solution there. It was complaints, but it isn't just stand in front of a gas pump and roll your eyes and say it's too high. Yes, but what are the policy issues that you are going to use to bring it down? And you can't do much in a minute, I'll admit, but he didn't even address the
I said
question.
it was too high because
It's,
he said it was too
It's-
low.
No
There's no
counter
more.
rebut, 30-second counter. You need a mic. Please, a question.
Thanks to both of you for being here this evening. And my question is directed at Mr. Sempolinski. Do you believe that Donald Trump should be the President of the United States as he ascertains the 20?
Thank you.
Well, I would say this, I voted for Donald Trump. I wish he had won the election. Sadly, he did.
I asked if you believe that the election was rigged.
I said sadly he didn't win the election.
Okay, I guess we're moving on because that's going to be the answer to that question. Telecommunications, oil, and agriculture, among other industries, seem to be moving toward monopolies. What danger do you see in this, and how would you address it? Mr. DelliaPia.
Could you read the question again, please?
Just turned off my mic. Telecommunication, I'll get it right by the end of the night. Telecommunications, oil, and agriculture, among other industries, seem to be moving toward monopolies. What danger do you see in this, and how would you address it?
Antitrust, anti-monopoly legislation is appropriate. There are things that can be used already, so if we can. The point is, the problem is that when you control the production of whatever, you can control the price, and there is not any competition, and that's not the way we should be doing business in this country, because it's the same thing or analogous to depending on China to have adequate computer chips for us. It's a strategic item that we should produce on our own. And we have just recently invested at least $41 billion in supports for an increased production of that critical resource to become independent in that in New York. And that's a good thing for all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, I get concerned whenever there's too much power in one industry and one set of hands. I think most people do. And this is a country, a society that's based on a free market, on free and open competition. And you want to have, if you have an industry or multiple industries, as indicated in the question, where everything's concentrated in a monopoly or a duopoly or an oligopoly, the little guy doesn't have a room to get in. And usually that's where innovations come from. They come from some small company starting out. You know, every half of you in your pocket probably have an iPhone. That's a company that was started by two guys that like to fiddle around with computers in a garage. So we need to have a system where it's open and the government makes sure everybody plays by the rules, including the existing antitrust legislation. And once they are playing as referee, let everybody go out and create and innovate and create jobs and employ people.
Thank you very much.
We have a question.
My name's Nick Grasso. I'm from Elmira, New York, in Chemung County. This question was originally for both candidates. Mr. Sempolinski has made it very clear how he stands, so I'll direct it to Mr. DelliaPia. Would you have voted for the Inflation Reduction Act?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I would. Contrary to what he said, I think it will have a positive effect on reducing both our dependence on foreign oil. It will also reduce our debt, and it will also increase our steps toward environmental protection. And I think all those things are good, and I think that I wouldn't have any hesitation whatsoever in passing that. Thank you.
Will you vote for a federal assault weapons ban? Mr. Sempolinski.
No, no, I would not. And we have had, obviously, in this country, some extraordinarily tragic situations over the last few weeks and months. We have to deal with that as a society. We have to deal with that by dealing with the underlying causes of those tragedies, not just dealing with the symptoms of those tragedies. We have to talk about why people get lost down a rabbit hole of hate online. You know, we have to talk about why people fall through the cracks of mental health. We have to deal with those underlying causes and try and find solutions together as a society where we can come to an agreement and a consensus. But taking constitutional rights away from law-abiding citizens who have done nothing wrong is not a solution that is going to be effective, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. DelliaPia.
It all depends on the definition of assault weapon. If you define an assault weapon as a semi-automatic weapon, it is virtually every deer rifle on the planet. So that has to be straightened out. But there are things we can do that may not be perfect, but are necessary to reduce the carnage that we're seeing in society. Number one, universal background checks without exceptions for gun shows or for exchanges between family members or friends, including a background check that includes if someone's on the no-fly list, if they're domestic abusers, if they have mental issues. Number two, I think we need to have a national ban on large magazines, detachable magazines. You can't get one in New York, but you can go 7 miles south and get one from Pennsylvania. It doesn't affect what we're trying to do. We need to also, okay, thank you.
You can finish your sentence.
It's okay, that's okay. I could go on.
Yes, I know. But somewhere put a period. And we're
Put a period.
You got whatever breath you're on.
Okay, here's an easy one. Are we in a recession?
Technically not, but we have to be very cautious about it. As we use monetary policy, this is not something that the Congress has direct effect on, but we need to, what they do is they increase the discount rate and take some of the money out of, essentially that takes money out of the economy. And what that does is it has a tendency to reduce inflation. If you overdo it, you cool down the economy to the extent that you are in a recession. And that's something that we as a country have to watch out for. But if you look at it, we have the best unemployment in 50 years. My problem with it is not necessarily that, but that we in this district don't have good paying jobs. It's not a good thing if you have to work 3 jobs to make ends meet. And I've watched it, I could go.
I know. Mr. Sempolinski.
Yes, we are in a recession. And the day before the quarterly GDP growth was released, I went and I typed in recession into Google to see what definition popped up. And it said 2 consecutive quarters of GDP loss. And I posted it on my Twitter feed and I said, I just want this screenshot here in case somebody changes this later today. And this is part of a larger problem with the Biden administration, where they are not straight with people. The definition of recession has been very clear for people for a very long time. And as soon as they knew they were going to hit that trigger, and it was going to be a technical recession, an actual recession, several days before, suddenly the word came down that we have to work on that definition, we have to massage that definition. It would be much better if this administration would just be clear and honest with you.
I think there's a couple of hands up there.
I'm interested in campaign financing, specifically yours. I'd like to know, and this is for both candidates, I'd like to know the main sources of your campaign dollars, whether the NRA is involved or those individuals that are covered under Citizens United.
Thank you. Mr. DelliaPia first.
I'm not taking any corporate money. I haven't taken any corporate money. I don't know of any PAC that's interested. DCCC hasn't given me any money. The majority of my contributions are under $100. I think on average, all of them average under $100. So I think that we should basically have public funded campaigns, number one. Number two, they should be of shorter duration. And I think no one should be able to even contribute to their own campaigns. They should account for every single penny, and when it's gone, it's gone. And it should be truncated to 6 or 8 weeks so that when somebody goes to Congress, they're not spending 4 to 6 to 8 hours a day on the phone, off premises, calling people for money. It has a corrosive effect on democracy, and it's wrong. And I think that's enough.
Thank you. Mr. Sempolinski.
You can, first of all, campaign finance disclosure forms are at fec.gov, so you can look and pull them up and see anybody that gives more than $200. Both Max and myself have to release those names. I have not received any money from the NRA. I don't think there's been any, Max, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's been any sort of outside money coming into this race.
Just Carl Palladino for you.
Hey.
Carl,
Behave.
I'm just saying.
Behave.
Carl, there's been no outside money coming into this race. Max hasn't received any money from the DCCC. I haven't received any money from the NRCC. So you can look where most of my money's come from. It's mostly people in this region in New York State that have given me dollars. So the good thing about this is it's all very, very transparent. And anybody can go look and see who has given us money, who hasn't given us money.
Thank you. Justice Thomas is using.
She had a question.
Okay.
Chautauqua County has the highest poverty rate in New York State. What can you do to help alleviate this?
Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. This is, and it goes beyond just Chautauqua County. You know, this whole region has been a region that access to running for federal office, but a lot of it is bad decisions that happen in Albany. And that's there. But at the federal level, I think we do need investments in infrastructure, we need investments in healthcare, we need investments in the infrastructure of the 21st century, which is making sure things are connected through the internet. And then we also need to make sure that the government, whether it's local, state, or federal, gets out of the way and let people, again, create and innovate and grow jobs and be there to deal with bad actors, but not be a bureaucracy that's going to get in the way of people.
Mr. DelliaPia.
I was on the board of the Tioga County Rural Ministry Board, and they are an organization that deals with people who are having trouble. They can't make ends meet. We would often, we had a food pantry, we had programs for getting kids clothes to go back to school, and creative ideas to keep people at work and in their homes. An example would be someone's working 2 jobs and can't make ends meet and can't pay for a replacement. There is no transportation in rural New York, so they lose the ability to get to work. They lose their job, they lose their home, and they're homeless. So we've bought used cars for them to keep them in their homes and in their jobs. Now, that's not an answer for everything, but the point I'm trying to make is we can, as a nation, partner with local people with boots on the ground to make a real difference in people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sempolinski.
I already answered that.
You already
Oh, you
answered.
did. I'm sorry.
I'll go again.
No, don't go again. I had a tickle in my throat and thought I'd get through it. Justice Thomas is using the federal abortion decision to call for the reconsideration of rulings ensuring legal rights for gay people and interracial marriages. Do you support Justice Thomas's views? Yes or no, and explain your answer. Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and I encourage everyone to read not only Justice Thomas's concurrence, but also to read Justice Alito's majority opinion. Because in Justice Alito's majority opinion is actually what is now the Dobbs decision and is the law of the land. And he's very clear, if you read that opinion, that abortion is a very different situation than it is some of the other things that were just discussed that Clarence Thomas references in his decision. So the actual law of the land is, in the Dobbs decision, in the majority, says how different abortion is from these other areas. So my feeling is, I agree with Justice Alito that abortion is a very different situation, and the Roe decision was on much less firm constitutional ground than the decisions that are being referenced in these other situations.
Mr. DelliaPia.
I thought it was interesting in the question that you said that Clarence Thomas is actually concerned about interracial marriage. I don't know if that's how he's trying to get rid of his wife or what, but if you read that, is that what it said?
It said gay people and interracial marriages.
Well, I guess that somebody wrote that. Anyway, that's interesting, but
you can see it's unscripted.
So I would say, certainly, we don't need judges who are there to consider constitutional issues to have an agenda and basically a roadmap of where they're intending to take our society back 200 years. I think that's activism in the courts. I think it's inappropriate. And the people who voted for that decision lied when they're under their confirmation hearing. And that has terrible implications for lifetime appointments, if you ask me.
Thank you.
We have a question.
Hang on. So do I. Do you believe that the filibuster should be abolished, Mr. DelliaPia?
I suppose I should be running for Senate to answer that, but yes, I do. It has been used traditionally and historically to prevent things that would reverse racial discrimination often. It is something that may have served its purpose, but I think it could be done away with. It is not without risk, however, because once you have the majority, you have a lot of power. But it has been manipulated so much and used for ill purposes in my mind, and oftentimes, that I think its time may have come. Certainly for some things, like voting rights, like racial fairness. Those type of issues, for sure, we should not be able to filibuster. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sempolinski.
No, I do not support figuring out the filibuster. If you go back and read the Federalist Papers, the commentaries of the founders, they talk about the House as being the House that is the chamber that is the will of the people. And they talk about the Senate being the chamber that is cool, deliberation. They refer to it as if you had poured tea into a saucer to let it cool off. And the filibuster is part of, and the filibuster rules have changed over time, but the filibuster is part of that role of the Senate, where if something passes the House, it is more difficult for it to pass the Senate. It needs to be a bill of broader consensus. We need to get more people to vote for it. I think that's a good thing. We have so much polarization, so much division in this country, and everybody's at each other's throats to try and just grab power for a moment. If we are passing legislation that you have to have a broader consensus, that's legislation that's more likely to be kept in place for a long period of time. It's legislation that's more likely to be something that's in accord with the will of the people more broadly.
Thank you. We have another question. Would you have voted for the infrastructure bill if you were in Congress, Mr. Sempolinski?
I'm supportive of infrastructure per se. I'm supportive of infrastructure investments. I think it's an appropriate federal role. I thought that particular bill was too expensive. I thought the level of spending was too high given the state of the economy. So I wouldn't have voted for that particular bill, but I would have voted for a different infrastructure bill that was more bipartisan.
Yes, Mr. DelliaPia.
I'm not sure how much more bipartisan it needs to be if it passed. And if you'll recall, Tom Reed, your old boss, voted for it. I agree with it. I think our infrastructure in our district has been neglected for decades, and it has had a terrible effect on our ability to be competitive. We absolutely need good roads. We need to clear up a lot of neglect. Bridges, water processes, sewer projects, and also broadband internet. That's something that everyone needs, and it became clear to me, particularly with our students who were in COVID situations where they needed to go on the computer and they didn't have Wi-Fi. A lot of the this rural district does not have Wi-Fi, so they end up in a Walmart parking lot trying to get Wi-Fi. That's not where I want our students to be.
Thank you very much.
We have a few back here.
Okie dokie.
I have a question regarding the January 6th attempted coup on our Capitol. Would you hold all of those responsible, including any elected officials or anyone that was working in the government at that time?
Mr. Sempolinski.
Well, I think the riot on January 6th was very tragic. Yeah, so there certainly were crimes that were committed as far as people entering the Capitol. They shouldn't have been entering the Capitol and disrupting the proceedings of the U.S. government. So if people broke the law, they should be held accountable for breaking the law.
Mr. DelliaPia.
Absolutely, everyone who has had a responsibility, has broken the law, has taken part in the insurrection or the conspiracies that led to it, anything that led up to it, absolutely they should be held accountable. It's not just for this incident. This is not something I take glee in. It's something that I have fears about. I never want to see what I saw on January 6th again. That's one of the things, the polarization that's being created by all of this stuff is frightening. This may be one of the chances that you have to send someone to Congress who is motivated for public service, for service to our country, not to themselves. We don't need more people that are motivated by money or power or ego.
That's why you can vote for me.
Thank you. Our next question, what are your thoughts about social media companies censoring accounts across their platforms? Mr. DelliaPia.
You know, I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the First Amendment freedoms. But just like you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, you should not be able to, and you should not be immune from prosecution for disinformation, misinformation, and you look at someone like Alex Jones, who knew damn well what he was doing. He was lying, he was making profit, hand over fist, and he was arrogant. He thought no one should have the right to tell him that his lies were not acceptable in a decent society. But the court was, and the people who were on that court were. They said it. Thank you.
Mr. Sempolinski.
Yeah, I get very concerned about big tech companies censoring people. It tends to be, over time, people that have conservative views. And that's
Like
a
Putin.
scary thing.
Like
for when you're posting something or expressing your opinion, you should be able to express your opinion. Now, we have laws that you can't defame somebody. We have laws that you can't slander somebody. But if it's legal speech, you should be able to say it, even if it's something that is unpopular, even if it's something that somebody else finds offensive. And so when you start going down the path of somebody in some office in Silicon Valley picking and choosing what is able to be placed online, I get very nervous about that.
30 seconds.
I'm talking about bots. I'm talking about Russia. I'm talking about China. This is not an accident, folks, that people are being grabbed and pulled down a rabbit hole and being basically indoctrinated to think that they're doing something good for society when in actuality they are being drawn to the darkest side of human nature. And that's a big concern for me and our society. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now allow 1 minute for a closing statement, a concluding statement, and we will begin with Mr. Sempolinski.
So when somebody votes on the floor of the House of Representatives, they speak for about 750,000 human beings. And that's a very sacred thing. That's a very important thing. Whether you do it once, whether you do it twice, whether you do it 1,000 times, whether you do it 10,000 times. However long you're there, when you speak for people, that goes to the heart of our democracy, the heart of our republic. This is the district that I was born in, the district I was raised in, the district where I'm raising my family in. My wife's here, my in-laws are here. This is my home. This is where I've spent my entire life. It's where I want to spend my entire life. We have to make a choice about who is going to go down and speak for us. I have spent my life fighting for all of you, working with you to navigate the federal government. It would be the honor of a lifetime if you would give me your vote and send me down to Washington to speak for you.
Mr. DelliaPia.
Okay. I talked about service, not just to my country, but my community. Ski Patrol, Meals on Wheels, Rotary, all those things, Tioga County Rural Ministry, the Racker Center Board President. The reason I bring that up is not to pat myself on the back or suggest anything, except my focus has always been service. My mom and dad are both World War II vets. My mom was in the Women's Army Air Corps. My dad was a paratrooper in the Pacific in World War II. My son's in Okinawa, serving as a KC-135 pilot. I think that my parents were right. Service is what gives life purpose. And when we ask our kids what to do, what they want to do when they grow up, what they want to be when they grow up, I think that's the wrong question. It should be, what do you want to do? You need to do. Just being a congressman is not helpful.
Thank you. I want to thank the wonderful audience that we have. You were very well behaved. Thank you very much. And I want to thank our candidates for, thank our candidates for participating and their willingness to run for this important office. And I want to wish them both a lot of luck. Voting is an essential step in democracy, and we want to keep our democracy alive. In exercising our choices for elective office, we affirm our faith in the process of democracy. This democracy is about who you want to represent you in the coming election. So let your voices be heard. Participate in voting. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on August 23rd in your regular polling site. But if you're eager to get it over with, you can go to an early voting site at the Board of Elections in Mayville, the Robert H. Jackson Center in Jamestown, the Chautauqua Mall in Lakewood, and the Chautauqua County Fairgrounds, where you have a good chance to meet me again. So I want to thank Mary and Jack Croxton, Pat Carell and Tina Rouse. Pat Carell's leaning against the door. She does yeoman's work. Fredonia Local Access and Lewidus Boces for giving us this fantastic room that is air-conditioned but doesn't have great microphones. So remember, if you want to see this or recommend your neighbors and family to watch this debate, it will be on YouTube. There will be links from our website and WNY News Now. There'll be a link from their website. And again, I want to thank all of you for being here. Have a safe drive home. Thank you. Very civilized.